Hi everybody, happy Friday. So I'm working on sealing the gas tank this weekend. So I started by masking off everything because I don't want to get stuff on the paint. And I just put on the gas tank etch. So I went with this Bill Hirsch product. Doing some research online, this seems to be one of the best products out there as far as sealing gas tanks, because this is like one of the only products that is alcohol and ethanol resistant. Most all other products are not designed to stand up to today's alcohol or ethanol. So this, like I said, this seemed to be one of the better of the products out there. First time I've used it, so we'll see if I like it and everything. And of course, this is a little bit different application than a normal gas tank, because I can't, pour it in and slosh it around and stuff like normal directions say, what you would do with a normal gas tank, because obviously there's no picking this up and sloshing it around. So I had to modify the directions a little bit to accommodate this situation. So they recommend starting with this gas tank etch. I don't know honestly if it's entirely necessary, since the tank is already clean. It's been all sandblasted. But if you have a rusty tank or whatever, they recommend starting with the gas tank etch. So I figured I'll do it anyway, and it shouldn't hurt anything. So the directions they spell out how to do everything. Basically they tell you to remove your fuel from the tank and ventilate it thoroughly. Remove the tank from the vehicle. Remove the sending unit, float, feed lines, filters, etc. And anything else that could become clogged by the sealant. That's not really an issue with this application. I did plug the hole, the little red plug there for the gas pipe coming out, so nothing would get in there and plug it up. Cover all the holes in the tank with wide duct tape, except for holes that you will pour the etch into, and the sealer. Obviously that's not really applicable either. Like I said, I kind of masked off what I didn't want stuff on. Make sure the tank is dry inside, which it was. If there's any gunk in there, basically you got to clean that out first before you go any farther. Which there again, it was clean, so that's not an issue. So okay, so what it says to do is pour the entire contents of this bottle of this tank etch and slosh around thoroughly, covering entire inside of the tank. Let it stand for 30 minutes and repeat sloshing. Let stand for an hour after a second sloshing, and then drain out the remaining etch and let the tank air dry thoroughly. Then the tank is ready for the sealer. Product is best used when temperature is over 70 degrees, so I do have the heat turned up a little bit here today in the shop to accommodate that. So basically what I did to modify those directions a little bit was I put some in a little container here. I used just a cheap throwaway brush here, and I brushed on the entire inside of the tank and the inside of the lid. I let it sit for a while, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And then I did it again to simulate the sloshing, I guess. And I'm just going to let it kind of dry here like the directions say. Because I let it thoroughly dry before you get to the tank sealer. So I'm hoping by tomorrow it should be thoroughly dry. It's already drying up considerably. Still a little damp yet, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm not even sure entirely what this product is. It's a tank etch, but what is it? non-flammable, non-toxic, non-corrosive, biodegradable. What is it though? Some proprietary thing, I'm sure. I don't know if anybody knows. I'd be curious to know what exactly that's doing. Some kind of a chemical thing where it's designed to convert the rust to neutralize it, as I'm guessing what it's doing. It's kind of leaving like a gray residue behind. So I don't know. I'm just following the directions. That's what they recommend, so that's what I'm doing. And then the actual tank sealer. It's a lot of the same directions. Basically go through all the prep that I just told you. Get it all clean and prepped first. Then you open it, mix it thoroughly until it's all white. So the instructions say then to pour the entire contents of quart can into the gas tank. Then cover over the hole that you used to pour the sealer with masking tape. Slosh it around and covers the whole tank. And then after you do this, stand the tank on end so that all the excess sealer can drain from the tank back into the can for later use. Don't allow it to puddle inside of the tank. You only want a very thin film to adhere to the inside of the tank. And then you let the tank air dry for at least 24 hours, in some cases 48 or even 72, maybe better, depending on atmospheric conditions. If the tank just had rust, one application should be enough. If the tank leaked, it may be better to repeat the process the next day. And then whatever, blah, 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 sending unit, non-applicable stuff here. So, and then one thing to note is that this thickens when it's exposed to air. That's what cures it. It can be rethinned by mixing with methyl ethyl ketone. Once sealer is set up in the tank, avoid using any products that contain methyl ethyl ketone or MEK, as this will obviously loosen up the sealer because that's what dilutes it. Obviously that's going to plug up your gas lines and whatnot if you have that happens. And then of course use this when the temperature is 65 and over. So as long as you don't use any products that have that methyl ethyl ketone in them, the stuff should be good, and it should stand up to all the fuel of today with alcohol in it, ethanol or anything. I don't plan to run anything like that. I try to run just straight, no ethanol, anything in my antique tractors as it is. But sometimes that's hard to find depending on where you are. So there again, what I plan to do with the sealer, since I can't dump it in there and slosh it around, that's not an option, because I plan to do the same thing, take a paintbrush and just put a thin layer of it on the inside of the tank and on the top of the lid here, and probably just one coat is what I'm thinking, since that's all it recommends, and that's for a rusty tank, and this isn't even rusty. So I'm not worried about leaks, because as far as I know, there's no actual holes in here. And I'm not really concerned about rust. I just don't, existing rust. I'm trying to prevent future rust is all I'm really concerned about. So that's the only real reason I'm even doing this tank sealer in the first place. I probably wouldn't have had to, but I'm just trying to do it right. I don't know. So that's what I know for now. Like I said, I'm going to go in, have a little supper, and call it a night here. We'll come out in the morning and hopefully get this liner taken care of, and that'll be one less thing to worry about. I can leave the tank top off and let it cure for a good long time before I put it on. So I also was working on serial number tags. I got the original tag all cleaned up, And I got the new itty bitty little brass nails, just like the original ones, to put it back on. And I actually tried to do it and put it on. But I was not having a very good day. I had gotten a little bit of epoxy just for good measure to put on the little brad nails, and just a little dab behind the serial number tag just for good measure. I don't think they're going to fall out, but you know what it is, just in case. But the holes that I drilled for the itty bitty little nails must have been just a little bit too small, and the nails weren't going in, and they were actually bending over. So I figured, okay, I'll pull them back out before the epoxy sets up, and I'll try it again with a different size drill bit. Well, of course, they broke off trying to pull them out, so I got it off, wiped off the epoxy, and just took a step back. Sometimes you get frustrated, you gotta just walk away for a little bit. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna order up, because all I have on hand here is we got 16th inch drill bit, which I broke one bit too, trying to drill a hole. We're not gonna talk about that. That was even more fun. So we got the 16th is what I used, which should be about right, but it's just a little bit too small hole for these brass nails, because brass obviously bends very easily. And the next size is too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and probably order up some letter drill bits, the correct size, something that's closer to the actual. I'll take my caliper and actually measure what that shaft of that pin is, and order up some bits that are the right size, hopefully. Because I even did a sample in this scrap here too, just to make sure. And I used the 16th, and I drove a brass one in there, and it seemed to work. And I tried pulling it out too to test how tight of a fit it was in there. And I ended up breaking it off, pulling it out. So I figured, oh yeah, that'll be just right. But it's just a little bit too snug going into that cast of the actual housing or whatever. So we'll drill out those broken off brass pins, and we'll try it again. So yeah, it's not all victories around here. Sometimes you gotta fail before you win, but that's part of the whole restoration thing. I also did get some new things from McMaster-Carr. I got some square hardware for the sulky. Some of these have to get cut to the correct length. And the heads have to be, the markings have to be ground off so they look original. And then I got, last week, I got a bunch of the original hardware cleaned up. So that'll go with that bolts. I ordered up a square O-ring to go on the gas cap. I don't know if it actually had one original, probably not, but I kind of thought it was a good idea. Gives it something to tighten against without messing up the paint, and I don't think it's an issue either, but if you say you did have the gas tank full and the gas is sloshing around in there, maybe a little less likely to leak up around the threads and potentially wreck the paint. But I thought it was kind of a good idea. And then I did order some O-rings for the fuel bowl as well. Same story, to go in between the bowl and the housing. I'm not entirely happy with how those ended up fitting. I'll have to do a little more investigating to see if it's going to actually work and seal up. It'd be nice to have one that was a little bit wider to fill in that gap more, but I wasn't having much luck coming up with the right size for this. So we'll see. I'll play around with that a little bit later in coming videos and see if that works. But all right, that's enough for now. See you guys in the morning. Well, it's some stinky stuff. Got the sealer put on here. It's Saturday. Went on okay. It's kind of tricky to put on because I suppose it's not really designed to be put on by brush. It's poured, designed to be poured in, sloshed around, dumped out, so it's all coated, almost instantaneously, right? Well, the brush, I gotta go a lot slower. So it's kind of like the analogy of when you're painting and your paint is drying too quick in the sun and you go over what you already painted and you start messing it up. Kind of like that. But it's all coated, and I guess that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be necessarily pretty as long as it's sealed. See what it looks like when it dries. I don't know if I'll do a second coat or not. I'm kind of thinking not. Like I said, we'll see what it looks like once it's cured out here. It's lunchtime now, Saturday, so go have some lunch, let the shop air out here a little bit, and come back later and see what it looks like. Sunday. Oh, I'm gonna go back to working on the clutch here a little bit. I figured I'd see if I could get it, the old original one, taken apart today. So I got in the vise here to work on it, just to hold it. I got a couple of C-clamps on here, compressing the big main spring to let the tension off of the center part. I think the next step is to get this little lock ring out, and then I believe that'll allow this to unthread off of the rest of that main center part, if I'm understanding how it's put together correctly. And then at that point, once this is off, then your throwout bearing will come off and the rest of it will come out the back, and then the rest of the big spring can come apart then. And you let the tension off of it. So I will check back if that works. Let you know. Well, that wasn't too terribly bad actually. What I ended up doing was putting a big pipe wrench on this pulley here to hold it stationary, and putting a little pipe wrench on this part, which was together like that, and it really didn't take much pressure at all. It came loose and it threaded right off, and then once it was off, I could get the remainder of the throwout bearing off, which is just completely junk. It's literally fell apart. So I'll have to find one of them. If anybody knows where to find one of them, I'm all ears. Hopefully it's nothing too specialized. It probably doesn't really matter as long as it's the right width and, inner and outer diameter is right. As far as actually what, I don't think it has to be like this specific shape or anything. So this part, I believe, is worn. So when I took it apart, this sliver of brass came out with it, which I believe was a shoulder on this side of that. So that's a little hole that this little snap ring feeds into. So there was probably a groove a little bit wider than this snap ring, and then another shoulder, probably approximately this size, on this side of the hole. And I'm guessing the throwout bearing was spinning on this part and basically wore out the brass. The bearing probably went bad, and instead of spinning in the bearing, it was spinning on this and wore out this part basically. So that's something else I'll have to figure out if I'm going to be able to fix this and turn up and put a bushing on here to replace that, or if we have to make a whole new part or what. Not sure yet. I just discovered the problem, so I'll have to think about it a bit. It'd be kind of a complicated part to turn up again. There's internal threads and this tapered cone. It'd be doable to turn one up, but I'm thinking we'd probably be able to fix this one. Put this in, square it all up, and turn basically a replacement part area, hopefully. So I'm going to finish taking this apart now and get it all over on the bench, and I'll show you what I got. So I got the clutch all taken apart, and I've been taking the first level of gunk off of everything, kind of inspecting everything, figuring out what's what. Well, I got this ring flattened back out somewhat because it was all bent up. I got all these arms freed up because they were all stuck. Oh, I got that somewhat flattened back out. That fits on there. Like that again. It's got to have the holes like that in the right spot, so it only goes on there one way. So I know I've talked about it, but so now I actually have some of the parts here to actually show you. So that's one flywheel, your clutch surface, one clutch disc will go in there. Obviously a complete one, that one's broken. And then your driven disc, we have to remake, goes there. And then another layer of clutch disc goes on top of that. And then that ramped disc that I'm missing goes on top of that. And then your rest of your assembly bolts on top of that. Like that. So that's kind of how that works. I discovered, like I suspected, that basically none of this power unit stuff is really going to work in place of any of the Allis stuff, with the exception of, looks like the springs are the same, but there, as far as I see, there's nothing wrong with my original spring, so I'll probably just use that after I clean it up. And this part on the power unit would probably work as well, because I believe they're the same with the exception of cosmetic differences. But there again, I don't see anything really wrong with this one, so I'll probably just use this again. So, you know, this unthreaded, and then the throwout bearing came off. I'll have to figure out what is available for throwout bearings, because obviously this one is no good. So anybody out there that has dealt with 612 clutches and throwout bearings, if you have any information on that, I'm all ears, so I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I'm kind of curious if people find original ones like this. So this is a non-sealed bearing, and this is on here. Let's see if we can do this one-handed. So when that's on there, this bearing sits about like that, so that the oil that works its way up through here and doesn't get slung back into the transmission, whatever works its way out goes through these holes and then into the inside of the bearing to lube your ball bearings in there. So that's how that gets lubed. But I'm curious, okay, does everybody put this type of a bearing, if it's even available, back in there, or do you go with some type of a sealed bearing and not worry about the oil aspect of it, so it's, you know, a sealed unit, so it's always lubed? I don't know, I'll have to do some research on that and ask some of the more knowledgeable people. Interesting, like I was speculating earlier, that this is wore out, and indeed it is, because it all makes sense. This half of this bearing, if this thickness is put, if I can show it on camera, you know, if you line up that with that back edge of this piece, if you line that bearing up with this back edge of this piece, that comes out to about there, which makes sense because that leaves about that much distance where there would be a step on there, a flange on there for that lock ring to sit in between those two flanges. So that all makes sense. So as of right now, what I'm thinking of doing, I think the fix for this will be, short of making a new one, would be to chuck this into the lathe, take and turn to this surface all the way over to this vertical surface, turn off all this, so it's all square, and then turn a new piece that would lightly press on to this piece that has the appropriate profile, so it would come up, over, down, and then have that step in there with the hole in it, and that would, one, it would help locate that piece. Yeah, it shouldn't be an issue if that's pressed on here anyway, it shouldn't move, but that pin would help locate it, and you could cross pin it this way too if you were worried about that part spinning, which I don't think it would be an issue if it was a light press fit on there. You could put a little bit of Loctite on there. So I think that would work to get this all back into specs relatively easy. It wouldn't be a too terribly hard thing to turn out and put back together. So that would fix this. I did notice when I was inspecting this, so this is what I believe is the factory hole at the end of this lock pin would go into. But it was riding in this groove here instead. That does not look factory to me, so I think what was happening, there's a possibility there was a hole here and then it's just worn, but I'm kind of leaning towards not. I think it was probably supposed to be here. It was probably put together wrong. It wasn't in that hole, or it came out of that hole, and it was riding loose for a significant amount of time, and then that end of that wire basically wore this piece out, which I don't think is going to be an issue, because if you put it back on here and line it up to that existing hole, because I don't think this has to be tight to this part. I could be wrong. I don't know if it needs to be or not, but if you line up, where is the old, yeah, now I lost my reference, but basically if you line up the original hole with the original hole, it's approximately like that. So it's not tight, but it's not, it was riding like there, and the original hole was something like there. So I'm not sure what to do. A guy could, I guess, tighten it up and then drill a new hole too, because I don't know if there's any real reason. I think the only real reason for this lock ring is to keep this part located on this part. I don't think it's really designed to be an adjustment like I originally thought, even though this one does look like it is that way because there's multiple holes for adjustment. This one doesn't really appear to have that feature. So that's what I know there. So I think that's fixable. Rest of these parts, like I said, look like they're okay. I haven't found anything wrong with them. So I think if we find a new throwout bearing if we get that ramp disc made up, which Norm's supposed to be working on that. I got to talk to him too. Maybe tonight here. I'll try calling him again. I tried calling him yesterday. Didn't answer. He was probably busy. And if we get this new clutch discs, of course, and I believe Norm has them as well, so that shouldn't be a problem. We're going to make up a new one of these, like I've talked about. I still got to figure out what material to make it out of and who's going to make it, if we'll try to make it ourselves or if I'll get my buddy Kyle to possibly make it. And then a new pilot bearing. I don't know if did I show you that already? I can't remember if I already talked about that. I knocked the original one out there yesterday so I could measure it up and try to find a new one. We actually, my buddy here in the shop here, actually had the same size bearing and everything on hand on the shelf, a used one, but so I'll find a new one. So finding the right size one shouldn't be an issue, but there again, the original was not a sealed bearing where the new ones typically are, so I'm not sure which route to go there. I think it about covers it. I think I'll probably wrap this video up here now and go see what I can find. Maybe go do a little bit of research on bearings, see what I can come up with. Mainly as far as throw-up bearing, because I know I can find that pilot bearing one way or another. But yeah, so if you guys out there that have been into these and know, what have you done? Let me know, get a hold of me, leave a comment, whatever. What have you done as far as bearings? Do you go as original, or do you go with some type of a sealed unit, or is there some type of a greasable unit out there in place of this? I don't know. Haven't got that far. Got to do some more research. But yeah, pretty good weekend as far as productivity here. We got some clutch work done. We got the gas tank lined. Yeah, let's keep picking away at it. It's been pretty easy to come and work on this stuff because it has been snowing. I don't know if you can see it out there or not, but it's currently snowing again here. Yes, snowing. It's only the end of October, but it has been snowing off and on, dustings for the last 2 weeks actually. So everybody was, wondering, why are you in such a hurry to get this stuff painted a couple of weeks back there on that Saturday? It was so windy. Why did you paint in the wind? That's not a very good day for painting. No, I completely agree. It was not a good day for painting. It was very windy. But it was the last nice day, literally, in the forecast. The last 2 weeks here, we've been just barely, at most, getting to about freezing, or just a little bit above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, it's been cold. It's been down to single digits a lot of these mornings here this last week. It's below seasonably cold. It's usually not this cold and this lousy weather as far as snow this early in the season. Usually you gotta wait till you get to like in November to get this, snow and icky weather. But this year winter came early, and I kind of got a feeling it might last. It might stick around. The forecast is looking a little bit better as far as next weekend. It might be like up into the 50s or something if we get lucky. So what I'll probably do is set up outside and get a bunch of this stuff wire wheeled up and cleaned up while the weather is somewhat nice. That way I can keep putzing away on this stuff when it is not nice out there, cold and snowy and icky. So that's what I know. Got to work with the weather, and the weather is not nice. So, all right. Catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.